During my last trip to Portugal to visit my in-laws, I ended up going to the ER. And so this video is a story about my ER trip in Portugal and how much it cost me in the end. So basically what happened was that a couple of days before my Portugal trip, I started noticing a small growth near my eye. And at first I thought that it was just going to be a stye, that just putting a warm compress on would make it go away. But obviously it didn't. And so when I got to Portugal, it just kept growing and growing. And I kind of tried to ignore it. I just thought, if I just ignore this growth and I just keep eating and drinking, maybe it would go away. And obviously it didn't. And so actually, if you look at my last video, you might even notice there's like a small bump near my eye. And when that video was filmed, it wasn't even at its worst. So basically this lump kept growing and I started getting a bit worried because obviously I only have one pair of eyes and they're super valuable. And so safety first, my husband just recommended that I just go to the ER for a peace of mind. I couldn't at the time go to a GP because I think it was the weekend and all the clinics and GPs were closed at that time, and I couldn't even find an ophthalmologist because it was the weekend. So basically, I think at this point, the ER was the best option for me. So we get to the emergency room, and honestly, I was expecting a lot more chaos for an emergency room, but it was actually quite chill. We stand in line to check in with a lady, and then she gives you a bracelet based on the urgency of your complaint. So obviously I got a green bracelet because my case was not very urgent. After that, you just wait until your name is called. After your name is called, you're brought into a set of doors, and then there's some doctors that are sitting there, and then they kind of assess the situation that you're in. So they assess it a little bit further. And that process, I think, from checking in to getting called to that first doctor was about 15 to 20 minutes. Super quick, I think. And then after that doctor checks you, then you're brought into a second waiting room, which is what I dub like the actual waiting room, where you're actually sitting next to people who can be bleeding or people who have IV drips in their arm. So I dubbed this the real ER waiting room. So I think I might have waited an hour before I was called by the ophthalmologist, and he gave me an assessment. And then he wanted to schedule an MRI because I had just had this problem for a while, and he wanted to be thorough and rule out any other causes that it could be. I was super thankful for, because living here in the Netherlands, I honestly don't know what it takes to get an MRI here. But not only that, I feel like if I were to come with my eye problem to the emergency room, I just feel like I would be turned away and just told to take some paracetamol and take a nap. So I was super grateful that he wanted to just rule out everything. So waiting for the MRI did take a couple of hours, because at that time there was a car accident that had happened. And so obviously they come first. And I am just a non-urgent case. So whenever they were able to squeeze me in for an imaging, that's when I go in. And so I think I waited for about 3 hours before I was able to go in for an image scan, and then it took another additional hour to get the results assessed. All in all, I think from the moment that I checked in to the moment I left the hospital was around 5 hours, which is super fast. I've heard of cases in the US where people just go to the ER and they sit there for 10 hours and nobody stares at them and looks at them. And so I was really thankful to be in a country that prioritizes healthcare, and I just felt safe and very well cared for there. So I was super thankful for that. So the total cost of my entire ER trip in Portugal was €0. And that's possible because as a resident here in the Netherlands, I have a European health insurance card, which basically means that if I go to any EU country and I have my European health insurance card, I am essentially treated like a citizen of that country when it comes to health. And obviously this is for like emergency cases, so it's not like, oh, I wanted to do a certain treatment and I'm going to come to Portugal because it's cheaper. It doesn't work like that. It is really, for more emergency cases, and it only applies to public spaces. A couple of years ago when I was in Portugal, I ended up needing to go to the ER because I had really bad food poisoning. And at that time, I was recommended to go to a private hospital. And so I wasn't able to use my European health insurance card then. That trip cost me around 600 euros, which is obviously much cheaper than what an ER costs in the US. European health insurance card, it's such an amazing, unfathomable concept, especially coming from the US, that I would be treated as a citizen of that country is just amazing. And so that is the story of how I went to the ER in Portugal, paid nothing, and now am not in debt because of my health.